What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we have a brand new episode of Raid Versus, the series where we take exotic weapons through the ringer of the Leviathan Raid, ranking them on every single encounter. And so, let's get started. The featured weapon today is a new weapon to Destiny 2, introduced with the Curse of Osiris expansion, but an old weapon in the Destiny franchise overall, as it did exist in Destiny 1, the Telesto Exotic Fusion Rifle. Now quickly, for those of you unfamiliar with this weapon, the Telesto is a really unique fusion rifle. Instead of shooting the traditional bolts that hit enemies and do damage, the Telesto actually shoots void fusion ball mines, and they'll actually blow up immediately upon hitting an enemy, causing pretty decent area of effect damage. Or if you miss an enemy, they will actually stay stuck to the surface they hit and detonate when enemies move over them. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. In addition to that, it will actually also reload your kinetic and energy weapons if you do get a multi-kill. So, how does this weapon perform in the very first encounter of the Leviathan Raid with the Castellum encounter? Well, here, the full benefit of a Telesto is on display, in the fact that you don't just have a fusion rifle. You basically have a fusion rifle, grenade launcher, or I should say rocket launcher hybrid. And that's because you have a fusion rifle that is phenomenal at area of effect damage. In the Castellum, enemies spawn usually in groups of 3 out of doorways. You can stick one guy with one shot from the Telesto and it will blow up all 3 guys absolutely no problem. Now, so will a rocket launcher. However, the Telesto is a lot more ammo efficient. It's going to pick up 3 rounds of fusion rifle every time you pick up a power weapon block. So if you're killing 3 guys with 1 shot and you're picking up 3 more shots every time you pick up power ammo, that is a pretty good situation. And you'll actually see in the background gameplay me using the Telesto all the time. To be honest, when I do these videos and I test kinetic or energy weapons, they run out of ammo so fast. And that's because it has been actually proven at this point that juggler is somewhat in the game. You will get ammo for your unequipped weapon 3 times more likely in terms of kinetic and energy. So that puts a huge strain on your ammunition. But with the Telesto, and the fact that it kills enemies pretty darn efficiently, and the fact that you're guaranteed a power ammo brick every time you kill one of the yellow health enemies, you can use this pretty much the entire time. Like my team, all 6 of us are using Telestos, and we used it the entire encounter. With that being said, speaking of the yellow health enemies, the Telesto isn't as efficient as other power weapons. You are going to need a full magazine of 4 rounds to take down those yellow health enemies, and even then if you miss a few orbs, you're going to need a little bit more. So against those larger, heavier enemies, it's not the best. But against the smaller individual enemies that are grouped together, it's phenomenal. And I do also want to mention another reason that Telesto is the besto, I had to say it once, is because it does have a fun factor. You can stick those orbs to any surface, including your teammates. So you can actually stick a teammate with a bunch of Telesto shots, he runs into a group of enemies, and those will all explode, which is hilariously fun to do, and I would definitely recommend trying it out. It may not be as effective, but it is fun. So, overall, in this Castellum encounter, you have a weapon that is so good at taking down groups of adds, and you have tons of groups of adds. The only downside of this weapon is that it's not as efficient at taking out those yellow health redeemers. So, I am going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's really fun, phenomenal gun to use in the Castellum. But it is time to move on to the first real encounter of the raid, which is the Pleasure Gardens. Now, for the Pleasure Gardens, you have the first group of enemies that are around, you have the dogs, and then you just have some beast herders. Those are just to get ammunition. No one really cares about how efficient a weapon is here. What you really want to know is how good is the Telesto at damaging the war beasts, the actual things you want to kill. Well, for these guys, as you can see, pretty average. In fact, almost below average. The Merciless Exotic Fusion Rifle is very, very good, and I actually use it a lot for the Pleasure Gardens, and the Telesto comes nowhere near. Its downside of not being good against those strong individual targets is definitely amplified here. It doesn't do any like weird trickery where it's triggering multiple hit markers at the same time or anything because of its blast radius, so it's just a less good than average fusion rifle in this encounter. And therefore, in the Pleasure Gardens, I would say it's a 4 out of 10. The only reason it's not lower is that it does have some utility because it does damage an area of effect. When you're damaging the normal war beasts and then a bunch of the small war beasts come and swarm you, you can actually just kill them automatically with the Telesto exploding. You don't have to worry about those guys. And so that is some utility, but overall, you just want stuff that's going to kill those war beasts as fast as possible. But moving on from there, we have the Gauntlet Encounter. How does the Telesto fare here? Well, the Gauntlet Encounter is broken up into several different sections. The first section is just killing enemies as they spawn. Several waves of enemies will spawn until eventually a yellow health Centurion spawns. You kill that guy, and then you're in the next section, which is running the actual orbs. So for the first section of killing enemies, the Telesto is fantastic. All of the reasons I went through, so there's no need to go over them again, for why it's good in the Castellum, comes up exactly again in this encounter. Enemies are spawning in groups of 3, in doorways, etc. So amazing at that first part. When the Centurion spawns, yeah, it's not as amazing, but it's certainly not terrible. You're not going to be unable to take down that guy with a Telesto, and you can always shoot a few rounds, take down his shield, then switch to super grenade, energy, or kinetic weapons. That guy really shouldn't be too much of a problem. In the other section, if you're ever planning to shoot the arrows with the Telesto, just don't. They don't explode automatically when they're shooting a wall. They just stand there stagnant. So that does cause some problems, but obviously you're not going to be using your power weapon to shoot of those arrows. You're going to be using your energy or kinetic, so it doesn't really matter there. But because it's so efficient at killing the enemies, I've got to say the Telesto impresses me again. In this encounter, in the Gauntlet Encounter, it earns an 8 out of 10. Very impressed. And moving on from there, the next encounter we have is the Royal Pools. This is also broken up into 2 main sections. Defending your plates as the weird chain slowly lowers, and then damaging the purple objects. The purple objects obviously being what you have to kill. So, the Telesto is really weird in this encounter, and you'll see why. So for the first section, damaging the enemies as you're defending your plates, it's decent at damaging the bathers. It's not doing anything special. Like we've said before, it's not good at those individual targets. Something like a Merciless would be better against just the bathers. But the Telesto isn't doing like incredibly low damage, it's doing okay damage. If you mix in a grenade, you should be fine. Now against the other enemies, you would expect it to be amazing as usual, but in this encounter, the way that the enemies spawn and the way that you're holding down your plate, the enemies actually spread out a ton. So you're going to have a really hard time getting the benefit of the Telesto in the fact that it does area of effect damage. You're going to just shoot one Scion or one Legionnaire. It's hard to get multiple guys. It's hard to get those groups of enemies that you find in other encounters. So it's really not too efficient. In this encounter, you might as well just use your kinetic or your energy weapon. But how does it fare against the purple objects? Well, it's super duper party pooper weird. It's incredibly weird, guys. So they don't actually trigger automatically on those objects. Although you're shooting those objects and although damage numbers is appearing, when you shoot those objects with the Telesto, it doesn't explode automatically. The mines just stay there. Now here's the weird part. Normally, you can actually trigger the mines yourself by simply shooting them. When they're on these purple objects, you can't really, and you'll see me in the background shoot the Telesto bullets again and again, and they just don't explode. Except for sometimes they did explode. And going over the footage, and I've been over it several times, try to slow it down as much as possible, I didn't see a single damage number ever appear for me for a Telesto explosion. So the Telesto, for at least for me, it did literally 0 damage. 0 damage. However, there's even more weirdness going on. I believe that If you have multiple people shooting a Telesto at the same objects, one person can shoot their own orbs and trigger them, but the Telesto bullets that they explode will trigger the other Telesto bullets, so maybe the damage numbers would appear for that person, but again, even when I seemed to trigger the explosion, I saw no damage numbers. Another thing that happens here is that when you're shooting the Telesto bullets, they absorb all of the damage. Like, the orbs absorb all of the damage when you hit them, even if they're directly on the object. So you're actually blocking you and your allies' shots by shooting the purple objects full of Telestos. So, very weird stuff going on here, but overall, just don't use them in this part. They're simply not good. So, my ranking for the Royal Pools encounter, it's going to have to be a 2 out of 10, considering they do literally nothing against the purple objects. Okay, now moving on from there, we have the final encounter for the Leviathan, the boss fight against Big Daddy Calus himself. So this encounter, like the other ones, is broken up into several sections. However, there's a lot of sections in this encounter. Firstly, you just have killing enemies in the throne room. Here, the Telesto is pretty decent. You're going to have enemies, again, spawning out of doorways. If you can hit one of the, war beasts as it's immediately spawning out, it can blow up and kill 3 other war beasts and 2 scions with 1 shot. And in those scenarios, the Telesto seems great. However, you do have a little bit more of the yellow health Centurions in this throne room than you did in even the Castellum. And in the Castellum, the Reclaimers are a little bit, less intense to deal with. In the throne room, they're definitely more intense. So you do want a power weapon that's great at taking down those strong individual targets, and the Telesto suffers there. So it's good against the mobs, not so good against the Centurions. Now, is it any good in Big Head? Well, here, you're obviously not going to be using your power weapon too much against the Scions. You're going to be using your kinetic or energy. Where you may use your power weapon, and where this weapon may have some functionality, is against the skulls, right? I mean, if you can tag multiple skulls with those orbs and they blow up, that's going to be amazing. Well, unfortunately, like so many other Raid versus videos, the skulls just work really weird. They have really weird properties. And as you can see, with the Telesto, they don't even get hit. The purple mines, or whatever they are, really, they go right through the skulls, it seems, or the skulls are just incredibly hard to hit with them, and so they're not triggering, they're not blowing up, they're not doing anything. The Telesto against the skulls, useless. But moving on from there, we have the final section of this encounter, and that is damaging Calus himself. Is the Telesto good here? Well, I've got some things to explain, because in the background gameplay, you're going to see my raid group with Telestos absolutely melt Calus on the first platform. We were able to get an easy triple platform kill, like a 1-phase easily. So does that mean the Telesto is insanely good? Well, not necessarily. If you actually look at the damage we're doing, his health is not going down by that much. It just isn't. The Telesto is not melting him. If we were using something like even the Merciless Exotic Fusion Rifle, or if you were using, most importantly, rocket launchers with cluster bombs, his health would go down a lot faster, and in the end, it would do much more damage. If we were using rocket launchers with cluster bombs, we would probably be able to 1 or 2 plate Calus in the same gameplay with the same group. But something interesting the Telesto did do was stagger Calus at exactly the right times. We were damaging him, and then exactly when you wanted him to stagger, he would stagger. The Telesto, because it explodes, because it's so unique, it does seem to have some staggering properties. Some properties that make enemies stagger a little bit more than your traditional fusion rifle. And so there, it does have a little bit of utility. But I would say that overall, looking at just the pure damage output, looking at the damage numbers, I have to say that even though it looks impressive in the gameplay, I think that there's other options that are much more impressive. So overall, in this Calus encounter, it's decent in the throne room, terrible against the skulls, and surprisingly okay against Calus himself. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It's average. And so, how does the Telesto rank overall throughout the entirety of the Leviathan Raid? And I do want to say that this overall ranking does not matter as much as the individual rankings, because you can just switch your class. You can use the Telesto when it's great and then switch to whatever weapons you want to being great against Calus, etc. The overall ranking is just a number that reflects the overall versatility and usefulness of these weapons in Leviathan. It's really going to help newer players that don't have a ton of exotics. They want to know which exotics they should bring in. Something like the Merciless, which is good in basically every single encounter, is going to rank extremely high on these overall rankings, whereas a weapon that is more suited for a single encounter is going to rank lower. So the Telesto, I'm going to say it gets a 6.5 out of 10. You have some encounters where it's trash, like do not use it, and you have other encounters that it's absolutely phenomenal, and the end encounter it's pretty average. I would say that this all equals out to an above average weapon. Obviously don't use it in the royal pools, and probably don't use it in pleasure gardens as well, but other than that, you have a very interesting new addition to your raid arsenal. Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this interesting. If you want to see another exotic weapon brought through Leviathan, leave it in the comment section down below. Guys, if you did enjoy, please remember to slap that subscribe button to see more Destiny content similar to this. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.